KURV. Our next guest has been published in the National Review, the influential magazine started by the late William F. Buckley. And I can't find his bio. I've got so many windows open that I can't figure out. But he started he's in school. And don't get out of school. My advice to you unsolicited is, just stay there, keep taking classes, and, eventually you'll age out. But right now you're fine. He's an undergraduate at Columbia, and he's originally from Atlanta, the son of Chinese immigrants. And now he's at Columbia University, founded the Columbia Independent. He's described here as a magazine for reviving debate through political commentary and the latest heterodox publication of the Ivy League. So we welcome Mr. Du. My question is it possible? The first question is, can you be heterodox in the Ivy League? Because everything I read says they just they go after anybody who doesn't think and talk like they do. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. And that's such a great question. And I think a lot of students, especially from Atlanta, where I'm from non-Northeast, non-California areas of the U.S. who come with a more diverse set of viewpoints, they come to the Ivy League. And it's a very intimidating environment because there is this loud orthodoxy from the left coming in that tries to pressure you into agreeing with everything that they say. And the big news of this academic year is obviously the war in Israel. And if you don't sort of agree with the Free Palestine movement, then, there's a lot of social consequences that can come from that. And so my answer is that I think, yes, it is possible to be heterodox, but you have to be principled and you have to be confident in your beliefs, and you have to be willing to tolerate and talk to people who really don't want to hear your opinion, who really don't wish you were able to express your opinion. And I think that if more students from the center or center right did that, then we'd actually be well on our way to bringing more diversity of opinion in the Ivy League. Right now, there's just a lot of fear that we need to overcome.
Fear of what, or of whom, or explain?
So I think the fear at some schools comes from fear from faculty, fear from, getting a lower grade on a paper because you express something the teacher might disagree with. Or this isn't true at Columbia, but some schools you might, fear from the administration. They might, prosecute your club or shut down your protests or something like that because they don't agree. But I would say most of the fear, it's coming from peers. It's coming from people who want to shut you out of opportunities, who want to shut you out of campus circles because they perceive your views and your ideologies to be unacceptable, to be not with the mainstream, not with the orthodoxy. And so that's really unfortunate because that's not at all what a college community should be.
Where we've seen this most dramatically, I think I'm right, is in the Hamas attack October 7th of last year, where they came out of Gaza and just killed everything, raped women, killed, just savagery. And the Israelis have responded, I would say, in a kind of a savage way, but because it's so brutal. But the complaint that I've seen, and I don't know what you see there, the complaint that's reported is the Israelis have to stop. This isn't right. They are killing. I mean, a lot of non-combatants are being killed, but that what I would think is because that the combatants are hiding among them, in some cases under the ground among them. What do people think should happen, and what do they think would be the result, your fellow students?
Well, let me tell you this. So I think it's very telling that, 2 days after October 7th terrorist attacks, before Israel had really done anything substantive, these pro-Palestine groups at Columbia and also in New York City, they were coming out and basically celebrating the terrorist attacks, and they're saying this is an act of resistance. And I think now, now there's a genuine debate going on about, is Israel being humane? Is it not being humane? Is it being careful enough? And we can have that debate, certainly. But I think it's really telling that before Israel even engaged in anything, these loud voices were coming out and essentially celebrating terrorism as a justified form of resistance. So this is essentially what we're dealing with. And for them, it's...
Let me ask you, when I always refer everything back to World War II. I was not alive then, but things are so clear, at least in history of World War II. When the Germans invaded Poland, the Polish people resisted. They fought back. They didn't want the Nazis there. That's resistance. What kind of resistance are they talking about in Gaza now? What are they resisting?
Right. So this is a really confusing idea that they're promoting here. Israel was not in the Gaza Strip. Gaza was governed by Hamas. Israel was not occupying it. So it's a bit of a confusion going on there. But to a lot of these leftist students at the Ivy League, to them, they see Israel as a state, as an illegitimate state, as a settler state, a colonial state, an apartheid state, and just fundamentally from the ground up, they view it as a state that should not have existed in the first place, a state that belongs to the Arabs, that belongs to the Palestinians. So anything that you do that's in support of that mission, they see as morally righteous.
Including gang raping women till their pelvises collapse? They're cool with that?
Well, they're certainly not coming out and actively condemning it. There's a lot of discourse. A lot of Jewish groups on campus are doing a really good job of raising awareness of this ignorance towards the violence against women, and they've come out with this slogan called, hashtag Me Too, except when I'm a Jew. And I think it's really telling. And I think a lot of leftists would do good to look at themselves in the mirror and make sure that they're condemning violence of all sorts.
Do you have any, where did this start? Nothing, no idea just springs up all of a sudden. It has a birthplace and it has someone to feed it and nurture it. Where did this start? That the Jews, all you have to do is read the Bible. I don't know what other holy books, and Jews and Arabs have lived there for a long time. So they're not newcomers in that sense. But where did this start that the Jews are the sole bad guys? That may be beyond your pay grade. I mean, I don't mean that in an ugly way, but that's asking. You weren't prepared for that question.
Yeah.
But
I certainly have some ideas, at least from the Gen Z perspective, about where these, toxic ideologies are coming from. And for me, it seems that this all came about in the critical theory movement in academia, where instead of looking at events holistically, instead of looking at people as individuals rather than as a member of their group, we start looking at the whole of society as a series of power structures, right? You have the oppressors and the oppressed. You have the colonizers and you have the colonized. And, what they've done is they've tried to fit the Jewish people and they tried to fit the state of Israel into this narrative. And to them, Israel's allied with the U.S., it's allied with Europe, that's the West, right? So they see Israel, they came in there in 1948, established a state. It's just like any other colonial enterprise. And so, we're categorizing Jews with white people, with colonizers, and that's bad. And, the Arabs and the Palestinians are the oppressed ones, regardless of whether they're the ones committing terrorism or not.
Well, permit me one more question because it's 31 past the hour. When you're having these discussions, does anyone bring up speaking of oppressed and oppressors, colonizers and colonized, does anyone ever bring up, hey, what happened during the Holocaust when 6 million we're not talking about gypsies, Poles, homosexuals, Christians, just the Jews, right? Just Hitler had to get all the Jews gone. That doesn't sound like they were in charge or colonizers, or that doesn't sound like they were. It was done to them. How do they explain all that? If the Jews are such bad,
right? And yeah,
bad people.
It's an unfortunate truth. And what a lot of people do, including some very leftist Jewish people at the Ivy League, what they've done is they said, don't use the Holocaust to justify more genocide, and they accuse Israel of doing genocide against Palestinians. And the extreme end of that, you had a club leader who went viral at Columbia for sending out an email basically saying in all caps that when I said the Holocaust wasn't special, I meant that, in terms of justifying their support for in this issue. And I think, that's obviously an extreme case, but I think it's illustrative of some of the ideologies that are happening around here.
Well, perhaps we can have you back, but right now I've got to bounce, as they say, and I'm sure you have something to do up there, something academic for you to do. Thank you very much, Jonas Dew. We appreciate it. He's a reporter, a filmmaker, and a student at Columbia University, and he founded the Columbia Independent, a magazine for reviving debate in the Ivy League. You're listening to the 956